We'll talk more about it.
It may be. All right, let's go to news now, Mika.
I'm doing it. And look at these poll numbers. A new Washington Post ABC News poll has Trump's approval rating sinking to 37%, 1 point above his all-time low, and giving him the lowest two-year average approval rating of any president in the 72-year history of presidential polling. Among political independents, 63% disapprove of Trump's job performance, up 10 points since November. The poll also found that 22% of Americans, more than 1 in 5, say they were personally inconvenienced by the 35-day government shutdown. And 63% told the NBC Wall Street Journal poll that the nation is heading on the wrong track, matching the record high for the Trump presidency. So the government is now temporarily reopened, but President Trump is again ramping up the pressure on lawmakers to strike a deal that includes funding for his border wall. The agreement with congressional leaders will last 3 weeks until February 15th to allow for them to continue talks over border security. On Saturday, the president tweeted, 21 days goes very quickly. Negotiations with Democrats will start immediately, will not be easy to make a deal. Both parties very dug in. The case for national security has been greatly enhanced by what has been happening at the border and through dialogue. We will build the wall. At one point in the middle of his White House speech on Friday, his teleprompter stopped rolling, and the president, oh boy, decided to riff on some of his familiar and unsubstantiated talking points on border security.
Based on operational guidance from the experts in the field, they will put together a Homeland Security package for me to shortly sign into law. Over the next 21 days, I expect that both Democrats and Republicans will operate in good faith. This is an opportunity for all parties to work together for the benefit of our whole beautiful, wonderful nation. The walls we are building are not medieval walls. They are smart walls. Women are tied up, they're bound, duct tape put around their faces, around their mouths. In many cases, they can't even breathe. They're put in the backs of cars or vans or trucks. They don't go through your port of entry. They make a right turn going very quickly. They go into the desert areas or whatever areas you can look at. And as soon as there's no protection, they make a left or a right into the United States of America. There's nobody to catch them. There's nobody to find them.
Wow. That's just
and nothing to get hung about. Strawberry fields forever. I mean, that I have absolutely no idea, Sam Stein, what all of that meant. That's a president, obviously, who has seen his poll numbers absolutely battered. His high, 43%, but that's an outlier. The AP had him at 34%. An ABC Washington Post poll this morning has him at 37%. This is what I don't understand, Sam. He's getting pounded. You go through every demographic group. Things are getting worse for him. What changes over the next 3 weeks? If Nancy Pelosi is not going to be moving on the wall, which she isn't and she shouldn't, then how does this end differently 3 weeks from now?
Well, it obviously doesn't unless he declares an emergency declaration, which, you know, he should. If it was, in fact, an emergency, he would have declared at any point over the past 5 weeks, which he hasn't done. But that speech was, like, very surreal, right? I mean, stuff he was talking about that is just not tethered to reality, the whole duct taping and right and left turns when they enter the country, none of it really makes sense. And I guess I just don't understand who is giving this president strategic advice in the White House. He spent 5 weeks doing the shutdown fight. He got the hopes of his base up. He then killed the hopes of his base by giving in. He ruined his poll numbers. He took an economic impact. He emboldened Nancy Pelosi. And then he says to everyone, I'm going to do this again in 3 weeks. I mean, that is insane politically. And I don't know what they think they have to win this fight that will be new to them in 3 weeks that they didn't have 4 or 5 weeks ago.
I think
and
it'll
Andrea,
end.
one thing that remains the same is Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is not going to move an inch on the wall. And, you know, Trump has to know that. This has to be a 3-week strategy, figuring out a strategic retreat.
It will end up being some kind of a semantic variation. You saw a couple of people meet the press, you know, talking about a fence. Well, in that case, if there is some money for a fence and they call it a wall or some sort of additional border security, money isn't the issue. That's the interesting thing. They're not worried about the fiscal side of this. They are willing, the Democrats, to spend a lot of money on border security, just not call it a wall.
Yeah.
And I think the difference is that the Republicans in the Senate have had it. They're really fed up. You don't have, and I don't think we'll ever, given the current circumstances, have 20 Republicans, according to people I've spoken to, who are willing to override a presidential veto or, you know, worst case, you know, do something at a convict in a trial, an impeachment trial. But because they see in his poll numbers strong Republican support, and so many of them don't want to be primaried. So he still has Republican support, but the Senate leadership and throughout the Senate caucus are really fed up. You saw that in last Thursday's lunch meeting, and they are not going to let this go to a
Let me just make one quick point on the Republican support. What was interesting byproduct of his cave was that, in fact, there was erosion of Republican support in all demographics. But last night, in an interview to the Wall Street Journal, Trump went after Ann Coulter for being mean to him. And if that's the type of bickering that you're going to see in the aftermath of these fights, I'm not sure that Republicans are going to be so allied to Trump in the near future.
No,
because what is the point?
I think they're still afraid of his
let's stop.
popularity.
Sure. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. David Ignatius, let's stop for 1 second, and this is not personal to anybody. It's just, the truth is, we all know it, as just a matter of fact, that it was Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh that actually got Donald Trump to move away from a deal that would have averted all of this. All of this. And if you are just Donald Trump or one of Donald Trump's closest advisors, you look at the incalculable damage that those two have done to this president and to this presidency and his ability to govern over the next 2 years. History books will be written about it. And I just wonder if Donald Trump understands how much those two savaged his presidency on that one day. Well, actually, he savaged his presidency by being so weak that he couldn't even stand up to him.
He has been like a yo-yo played by these right-wing commentators. It's been true from the very beginning. He had, through Jared Kushner, a deal with Mexico to finesse the whole issue of the border in the first weeks of his presidency. Mexican president was coming to Washington. The deal was set, and there was right-wing condemnation of it, and Trump just absolutely freaked out. He just can't handle the criticism from the right. Oh my gosh, my base is in danger. Yep. And the deal was scuttled. The Mexican president canceled his visit, and that's sort of the prelude to what we're in now. It's still going on. I'll make a crazy prediction, which is that by February 15, the deadline, we will have a deal. I think the Democrats would be foolish not to take this as a win. There's a way in which they can craft a win that the country will like. Country is so sick of what they're watching. And if the Democrats extend that, or seem to extend it, strikes me they
I don't know on what planet him closing down the government again or declaring a national emergency would be politically prudent for him in any way, and not
or
a complete disaster. Yeah, exactly. And speaking of...
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.